Alright, so in the last tutorial I showed how to make a global material that supports puddles and weather effects. And in today's video, I'm going to show you how to add all sorts of other effects like these drips and streaks. Now, I got these drips and streaks from videos by cloward. I highly recommend his channel. And I'm not going to go through the actual making of these effects. But if you follow my Patreon, you will get the project file with these effects. If you do not follow my Patreon, I just recommend you watch these videos. I'll put a picture on screen of their name and I'll put a link in the description. Alright, so in the last video we made this material function for the weather system. And at first glance you might notice that something is different and we're missing a lot of wires. And that's the main thing I'm going to go over today, which is mostly workflow stuff, is how to use these nodes right here and what they are, and how to blend multiple effects as well at the end of our weather system so that you can keep adding whatever effects you want and that everything is scalable and modular, which is a good principle to have for any sort of game design. So let's show these nodes up here. These are called named reroute nodes, and you can find them by just typing add named reroute declaration node, and then you can name whatever you want. Right here, as you can see, before, for this function, our input, we had input color, we had input roughness, and we had input normal. Now this makes everything way easier because I only have one input, which is the material attribute. So if I go into my base material, the master material now, you can see the weather system only has material attributes. So your material is going to need to have use material attributes on, and you're going to need a make material attributes before you plug it into the final material attributes. And between these two is where then we can plug in all of our effects, and it's really easy now because we just have one wire that we need. Now you can see I added these bools to the function, but this is just turning effects on and off. This has nothing to do with the actual input, which is just this material attributes. So back in here, we take this material attributes and we can do a get material attributes node. And what you do when you make a get material attributes is you press plus over here, and then you just get to add whatever ones you like. So I just did base color, roughness, and normal, just like before, but now it's all inside of our function. Then you can just drag these out and do a named reroute declaration node for each one. And I named, as you can see, material attributes in, color in, roughness in, and normal in. So I like to describe these as like Bluetooth nodes. Basically what this means is that we're creating a new variable that we can reference without wires. As you can see, I take the roughness in, and then if you right click, you can go into your named reroutes and just click whichever one you want. And then the out of this reroute will be whatever you plugged in over here. So now we don't need these wires going everywhere. We can just put everything in its own section, and it just looks a lot better. So I already did the beginning part, but now we're going to change the blending part to be more efficient. So as you can see, we have color in, then we're going to need a color out. So at the end of all the functions that we do to the color, which is right here, you can just do this, named reroute, and call this color out. And I'm going to just make it the same color as this one, just to make things easier. And then we can get rid of this right there. And we're going to take this roughness, which is the roughness, out. Change the color again. Normal out. Oh, named reroutes. And we can get rid of all these reroutes. Now you can kind of start to see how easy this makes everything, because we have the base material attributes. We can plug it right into the set material, and that's the same one we got from the beginning. And now we can just grab all our outs and plug them in like this. And personally, I just like this a lot more. I think it's way more professional, way more organized to do this. And visually, if someone else is looking at your material, they will have a much easier time understanding what's going on if they don't have to follow all the wires everywhere. So here's our blending section. And as you can see, I had those static bool parameters on the weather function, so here they are. To do something like this, we need an input, and we need a static bool. And then when you create an input, a function input that's a static bool, like this, then on the outside, you can see that it'll create another node plugin, and then we'll turn this function input into a parameter for the material. That way, each instance of the material will have these parameters that you can then change. So in the master material, you can set what the default is, and I want the drops and drips to be on every object by default, and I want the puddles not on by default. That's because the puddles are only for the ground, and there's a lot more objects that are going to be not ground versus ground. Anyways, going in here into our instance, then we can just easily turn these things off or on, and it's different for each material instance that we have, which is super nice. Now let's get back into the blending. We're using switch nodes here, which when you type in switch, this one might come up. This is not the one you want. You want static switch. And then you can plug in, basically this is pretty self-explanatory if you understand coding. Whatever you put in the true and the false, depending on what the value is right here, will come out the other side. So as you can see, if use puddles and wetness is true, then we're going to set all the material attributes based on the weather effects, because these outs are after the weather effects are applied. For this other one, the switch is true for physical rain, and so into the true input, we have the material attributes that are then being run through physical rain, and false will just keep whatever happened before this switch instead. So this way you can just keep making effects, you can keep making a chain, and for each one you can have whatever your effect is in here, and you can have your input and your bool, and you can just go along the line and everything should add on top of each other pretty easily. Just make sure that you have your effects in an order that makes sense and looks correct. So yeah, that's all I got for today. Today's a short one, but in the next episode, I'll go over making a bunch of functions that we're going to stack on top of each other to make your master material very customizable. Thank you for watching, and remember the project file is on my Patreon. And if you have any questions, feel free to leave them below.